Today I'm going to be taking you guys through the best controller settings for the Modern Warfare 2 beta. These settings are going to be common to all platforms, so whether you're playing on PS5 for the first weekend beta or you're on any other platform, so PC or Xbox in the second weekend, these will all be applicable to you guys. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the settings. I'm using a DualSense controller on PS5. There might be some specific things for DualSense controllers like haptic feedback. We're not going to be worrying too much about those anyway, so this will all be common. Starting off, aiming input device. Obviously needs to be controller without saying too much more. I mean, we're not using a mouse, we're focused on controller for this video. Button layout preset. By default, this is set to default, but I'd recommend that you trying out tactical if you haven't before. What tactical does, if you guys don't know, is it changes over your melee and your change stance button. So typically you melee by pushing in the right stick, and you change your stance, so you can dolphin dive in this game, but you can slide, you can crouch, you can hold, you can go prone. You do all that by using the circle button. By changing those two over, you're now moving all of your movement into the right stick, and it's a far better gameplay experience in general, and I'd recommend that you guys try it out. Then we've got flip L1, L2, and R1, R2. I'd recommend that you guys turn this on in general. The reason for this is that we want to be able to aim down sight and shoot as quick as possible, and having those two very, very core things in an FPS game be on buttons rather than triggers is definitely the better option. Stick layout preset, I would generally leave this on default. Controller vibration is on by default. It's kind of a personal preference thing, but I'd recommend you turn it off. It will save you controller battery in general because you're not having to have your controller vibrate. Your controller's going to vibrate a lot in game. It can be off-putting. I'd recommend you keep it off. And then trigger effect, full haptics. If you're playing on PS5, I'd recommend that you turn this off once again. We've already changed our shoot and ADS buttons to buttons rather than triggers anyway, but I don't like having haptic feedback in competitive games. It feels good in single-player games, but for multiplayer games, nah, not really up for it. Then we've got horizontal and vertical stick sensitivity. This is pretty much personal preference. I'd say a good starting point is putting these both on either 6.6 or 7.7. Most people choose to have these as the same, so having your horizontal the same as your vertical. I would generally recommend that. COD has a decent amount of verticality to it as well as left and right, so it's not like a game where you can just turn up your horizontal stick sensitivity and turn down your vertical one. Makes sense to have them both the kind of the same, and 6 is a nice medium to start off with. What you need to do is just pick a sensitivity, run with it, see if it's right for you. If you need to bump it up or lower it down, then you can do that. I can't really recommend a best sensitivity. I can only say start off with this. For ADS sensitivity multiplier, it starts off at 1.0. I'd actually recommend that you guys try turning this down a little bit, maybe to something like 0.8. What this does is when you ADS with a one-time scope, so anything that's less than those kind of really long scopes, it will actually mean that you have slightly less sensitivity. Specifically, this would be 80% of the sensitivity that I set here. It allows you to fine-tune your aim once you've zoomed in a little bit and you've lost a bit of your FOV. It allows you to kind of fine-tune your aim a little bit more than you usually would, leaving it at 1. It's a personal preference thing once again, but I think 0.8 is a good starting point for most people. For the sensitivity multipliers, I tend to leave these all at 1. This is all personal preference. If you want to change your third person or vehicle or tablet sensitivities, you can do that. You might find that in-game you like to have your sensitivity for vehicles a lot higher because you're not as, focused on actually trying to aim as such. You're just trying to look around very quickly. If that's the case, you can turn these up here, but I in general like to leave these as 1, so there's a 1-to-1 ratio to my normal sensitivity. And then vertical aim axis, leave these all on standard. All this does, it makes it so that if you want to invert it rather than standard, it would mean pushing up makes it look down, pulling down makes it look up, which is sort of how you'd control a plane if you were flying it, but most people are more used to just leaving this at standard. In the gameplay area of the controller section, aim down sight behavior, we want to leave this to hold, not toggle. That's very standard for COD. Automatic sprint, I actually recommend that people try out auto tac sprint. It makes it so that your controller has a far better lifespan, and a lot of pro players do prefer to use auto tac sprint if it's not banned, and it means that you will just be able to continuously sprint without you having to constantly smash in your stick every time. It's a lot better. Give it a shot. Equipment behavior, generally keep this on hold. Weapon mount activation, ADS and melee. This is up to you guys how you want to do it. Basically, how do you actually weapon mount? I've stuck to ADS plus melee, it works well for me. For interact reload behavior, this has actually changed since the previous CODs and Warzone. We've now actually got the option of selecting between prioritize interact and prioritize reload, whereas before we just had a general contextual tap. If we want it to match how we had it before, you want to put on prioritize interact. What this does is it means that if reload and interact, which both use the square button, actually are available at the same time, then tap will be to interact. So if you just tap the button, it will interact. So open a door, open a chest, pick up a weapon, whatever, and you'll have to hold to reload. If only reload's available, so there's nothing to interact with, then tapping the button will reload. That seems to be the best option here. Otherwise, you can just hold to reload all the time. It just means that all scenarios are covered. And then armor plate behavior, I don't believe we're going to be having any of this in the multiplayer beta anyway, but in general, for future reference, you want this to be apply all, so you can press the button once and you can apply all of your armor plates without having to spam the button. Next, onto the advanced settings. Starting off with the aim assist area. Target aim assist, we definitely want this on. You should never be turning off aim assist on a controller. It makes it impossible to aim at anyone. Next up, aim assist type. Now, we've got a few different options here. We've got default, precision, focusing, and black ops. I would recommend, in general, to just start off with default. Just leave it there. That's how Modern Warfare games in the past have used aim assist by default, and it works pretty well. If you are someone who is brand new and who's really struggling to stay on target, you can give focusing a try. As you can see on the right, it says it's a stronger aim slowdown that also kicks in when narrowly missing a target, best for players new to analog aiming. So it just makes the aim assist potentially a bit more invasive. So if you're a bit more used to using a controller, it will actually feel a bit weird, but if you're newer, it might mean you land a few more shots. So I would try between focusing and default, with my preference being default. Aim response curve type is going to be a personal preference, but it's basically between standard and dynamic. There's probably a 50-50 split on people who like both of these, so all I can say is try both of these out, tend to avoid linear, and just see which one of these aim response curves feels better. This is going to determine how fast you move based on how much you've tilted your stick, essentially. And the standard and dynamic do have slightly different feels. I have tended to like dynamic more in previous games, and so in this game I'm assuming it's going to be pretty much the same, so that's what I'm going to go for. And then ADS aim assist, it's only available in single player, so it doesn't matter, but I would just leave this on for all of you campaign fans. ADS sense multiplier focus is your multiplier when you actually focus, so when you're ADSing and you're holding your breath, essentially. I would just leave this at 1. You don't want to add too many multipliers on. You will just never get the muscle memory in terms of using all of your different kit, so just leave this to 1. ADS sensitivity, transition timing, you want to put this to instant so that as soon as you press the ADS button, you get that new sensitivity that we set earlier for our ADS. We don't want it set to gradual or after zoom because it will feel a lot stranger, I'm telling you. Custom sensitivity per zoom, I'd recommend in general you keep this off. Some people may find that they like boosting the sensitivity of some of their really scoped in scopes because otherwise they can't actually move from target to target quick enough when playing on controller. But me personally, and what I'd recommend to most of you, is you just start off with it off and only come and change this if you really think you need to in the future. For the input dead zones, we've got dead zones for the sticks, min and max, and also the L2 and R2 buttons. In general, you need to keep the left and right stick maxes on maxed, which is 0.99. The only reason you would change this is if for some reason you can't move either of your sticks all the way to the side. So if you can literally move your stick all the way to the side and move it all the way around without any problems, then just leave these at max and that'll do you good. Then for left and right stick min, you need to do a bit of trial and error. Jump into a game, set both of these to 0, and then if you just leave your controller without you touching it and you're just standing still, if you notice that your guy is moving a little bit or is turning a little bit, that means you've got a slight bit of stick drift, which happens with controllers over time. Then what you need to do is, if you're moving around a little bit, you need to slowly turn up the left stick min until your guy stops moving. When you've done that, you've set your dead zone correctly for the left stick. For your right stick, this is all to do with your aiming. So if your guy is slowly turning around, you need to do the same thing. Slowly turn this up until your guy stops moving. Then you'll have your dead zone set. For me, I've got a brand new controller, so I actually just put these to 0.01 rather than 0, just for a little bit of safety, and I'm having no problems. And then for the L2 button and R2 button dead zones, I'd honestly recommend that you just leave these as is. The reason I leave these a number rather than trying to turn them all the way down to the bottom is because I do sometimes accidentally, tap these triggers slightly. And the last thing I want is to accidentally tap a trigger a slight amount and end up throwing a grenade or throwing a tactical and getting killed because of it. Now let's fly through the movement behaviors. Sprint, tactical sprint behavior, leave this at toggle. This means you don't have to keep this stick held in to run. That doesn't sound like a fun idea. Auto move forward, definitely keep this off. No reason we would want to do this. Tactical sprint behavior, I would leave this as double tap in general. For grounded mantle, to get better control over your game, I'd recommend you turn this off. If you have this on and you move towards a wall or something, then all you'll have to do is press X to quickly jump over it. But it will mean that you won't just be able to jump and look over it. By turning this to off, what we're doing is it's making it so that you have to jump and then press the button again to actually do the mantle. It's an extra step you have to do, but it gives you way more control in game and it allows you to make a lot more plays in the game. Automatic airborne mantle, I've left to partial as that just makes it so that it will mantle you if it's going to prevent you from falling to your death, which is very helpful. Automatic ground mantle, I would keep this off. This would just basically mean if you're sprinting, it will automatically mantle. Not something we want to do. We want to have complete control in our controller for this kind of stuff. Invert slide and dive behavior, I would keep this at standard. It means that you have to just tap to slide, which is what we're used to, and then you hold the button to dive. That makes a lot more sense, leaving it as is. Plunging underwater, leave this as movement. Parachute auto deploy, not a big thing for Modern Warfare Beta, but we're going to turn this off because by having our parachute auto deploy to off, it means we get better control over how quickly we can actually get to the ground in Warzone. But we're not going to be seeing that anyway. Sprinting door bash, I would recommend that you keep this on. It means that if you sprint at a closed door, you'll bash through it. This is in general good. There's not going to be any time that you're going to be wanting to sprint at a door and it not open, so I would leave this on. For ADS stick swap, ADS interruption behavior, weapon mount movement exit, and weapon mount exit delay, leave all these as default. Then depleted ammo weapon switch, put this to off. This will make it so that when you run out of ammo on a weapon, you don't automatically swap weapon. Once again, it's trying to do something automatically to help you out, but really you should be learning to take control of this stuff with the controller that you've got. Then quick C4 detonation, turn this to on. This makes it so that when you press the lethal equipment button after throwing a lethal equipment like a C4, it will actually blow up that C4 rather than just throwing another one. Makes a lot more sense. I know a lot of people just do the double tap square technique to blow up C4 anyway, but turning this on is a nice failsafe if you happen to not use that double tap square thing. And then for everything else in this menu, just leave it as default. And there we go, guys. They are the best controller settings for Modern Warfare 2's beta on all platforms, whatever controller you're using. If you want more videos covering things like the gameplay settings for consoles, as well as, of course, the graphics settings for PC when that comes out on the second weekend, it will all be here on this channel covered by me. So subscribe down below and leave a like on this video to show your support. That would be awesome. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.